Good morning. I was diagnosed as autistic with ADHD in December. Let's get into it. I do realise that I'm not very good at this yet, but something that I do really want to talk about is verbal processing and working memory, which are two things that I'm really battling with at the moment, and that I think a lot of autistic people and people with ADHD struggle. It's sort of like an internal struggle all the time, but I digress. I was diagnosed last December in Australia with autism level 2 and ADHD. When I realised that I was autistic and could possibly have ADHD as well, the first thing I realised is that it wasn't going to be easy to seek help and actually get diagnosed and get that validation, which was the best thing for me. I really needed to just know how I function and why I function differently to other people, and why I have struggled with certain things that other people haven't my whole life. So getting diagnosed for me was really important. The first thing that I did was I realised that I had to find someone who liked working with neurodivergent clients, who understood high masking individuals and people who have been masking their whole life and have been undiagnosed. So I wanted to find someone who properly understood that. So I started looking for psychologists in my area that might be able to help. Also considering that I needed it to be affordable, because I was working full time at this point in my life, but also I needed it to be an affordable thing for me. Even though my parents down the track actually did offer to support me financially a little bit to go through that process, which is really helpful and really nice of them. But I wanted to find someone who was reasonably affordable. So I found someone in my area, and luckily the first person that I saw in this time period was really great, and she knew exactly what I needed. I actually had seen a couple of psychologists and counsellors before I saw this person, and none of them really picked up on me struggling with any of these things that come along with being autistic or with ADHD, and I don't think I could properly explain to them what I was experiencing as well, so that didn't really help. Regardless, I found the right person. So what I did was, in my first session with the psychologist, is I made a list before going to the appointment of everything that I think that had convinced me that I was autistic, or that there was something else going on. There was some reason why I wasn't able to cope with everything as well as everybody else seemed to be able to handle everything. So I made sure that I was prepared and came with every single reason that I had researched why I think that this was me, basically. I told her everything that I had written down and prepared, basically, and immediately she said, obviously you think that there's something going on, that there's something extra that you are experiencing, and that's something we can definitely look into. I didn't actually say to her, I made sure that I didn't categorize everything that I was experiencing as autism yet, or as ADHD, because I didn't want to put myself in a box straight away and basically tell her that I had already self-diagnosed, because I know that a lot of psychologists don't like you to do that basically before they've actually done a proper evaluation and decided whether it actually was ASD or what it was. And I was okay with that. I just wanted it to be looked into, and I wanted to discuss it more and discuss what it possibly could be at the very least. And she was very, very open to do that. So pretty much straight away we did a few of the, I'm not sure what they're called, I've actually forgotten, but the little sort of tests that they run through with you just to sort of get an idea of, they don't tell you what tests they are, but she asked me a bunch of questions trying to figure out what my experiences actually were and how they relate to probably the DSM-5 criteria and ASD, ADHD, social anxiety, whatever it was that she was testing that it possibly could be that I was dealing with. And I had to wait for the results to get back on those initial tests. And she told me basically, there is a high chance that you are autistic. She hadn't tested me on ADHD yet, I don't think. This was just for autism. So then she pretty much asked me, do you want to seek a formal diagnosis? It can be quite a process. Am I prepared to do that? And I said, absolutely. That's exactly what I want to do, because that's what I need right now in my life. And she referred me to a psychologist who could actually do the proper assessment and diagnosis, so that I could go through the formal diagnosis process. Then there was a lot of paperwork and a lot of waiting. This is the waiting period where I think I had to wait up to 4 or 5 months, maybe longer, to actually even see the psychologist who was doing the actual formal diagnosis. Just for the initial appointment as well, not the actual assessment. So I had to wait. I think I was lucky though. People wait a long, long time just to even see someone for an initial consult. So I was very, very lucky that I got in even in this time frame, but I was still sort of sitting there waiting, just waiting for an email or something to tell me that this was happening. It felt like the longest period of time. So eventually I got to have my initial consult. I am back and in a different outfit because I am filming this over multiple days, because I live with my partner and he is here a lot, so I don't really want to film while he's here. So basically after the initial consult, which was basically just to touch base and figure out why I wanted to get diagnosed, how to progress from there, and sort of just outline how much the process was going to be and whether I still wanted to go forward with it. So after the initial consult was when I had to make my payment of, it was $2,500 for the diagnosis of autism and ADHD, or the assessment of autism and ADHD. Yeah, $2,500 for both, which for me is not very affordable. And I know for a lot of people, they can't actually get diagnosed or go through the process, which is incredibly helpful and validating to anyone who thinks that they may have been undiagnosed their whole life. It can be incredibly validating. But a lot of people can't even do it because, yeah, it's just not an affordable thing, and obviously you can't seek assistance from Medicare or anything like that. It's literally just an upfront cost that you have to pay before you even go through the process. You have to make the full payment of $2,500. It's different for if you're just obviously getting diagnosed for ADHD. I think it's a completely different price range, obviously, or just autism. But for me, it was both. So yeah, I'm very, very, very grateful that I was able to have some assistance from my parents who, yeah, offered to financially support me through it at the very least. And yeah, a lot of people just don't have that, so I realize how incredibly lucky I am to have that support. So my assessor also wanted to do a cognitive assessment, which some people don't need to get that done as well, but she wanted to do that for me. So that basically involved common knowledge questions and pattern recognition sort of questions, language questions, very random sort of. It felt like I was doing NAPLAN again, if anyone knows what that is in Australia. So it's sort of just, yeah, very random questions to assess your cognitive development, obviously, and where you are, and what your IQ is, basically. So that was the first assessment that I had to do, because obviously there's multiple parts of this whole process that I had to go through, and that was the first one. It was in person, so I had to actually go into the clinic, which everything else in the assessment was actually done online, so through Zoom. So this was the only one that I had to go in and meet my assessor, and it was a lot of sort of watching me as well, and deciding how I would, like, if I had any sort of traits that she could see in person that she wasn't seeing over our Zoom call as well. I think that's a lot of where that came from in this cognitive assessment. So just be aware of that as well when you're going in, especially if you're high masking, because a lot of the time us high maskers try very, very hard not to show any of these traits and stimming and that sort of thing, because we want to fit in as much as possible, and we're so used to masking this that when we get to the assessment, the assessor actually can't see any of these behaviors, and then they think that, yeah, they sort of get this impression that we're not autistic just because we have gotten so used to masking. But a lot of the assessors, I think these days, are very aware that, especially in women, because we've gone so long with being undiagnosed, that we do mask a lot of these behaviours. And I think that my assessor was aware of this when she was performing my assessment. So the next step, I believe, if I'm remembering this correctly, I might be mixing up the order of things, was that it was just a one-on-one sort of chat. But it was basically the bulk of the assessment in a one-on-one chat over a Zoom call with the assessor. So that just involved her asking a lot of specific questions about what I was like growing up, what I remember, behaviours that I remembered as a child, and also just why it's come to this point where I feel like I need a diagnosis. So yeah, just a lot of questions based on your family situation and your relationships, friends as well, to sort of get an idea of how you might relate to the DSM-5 criteria. So this was all split up over a couple of weeks as well, so there was never sort of 2 appointments in 1 week for me. It was sort of spread out over a long period of time, which is why it can be so I don't know what the word is, not draining, but kind of an overwhelming experience, because it's sort of, it gets dragged out for a long time, and you're dredging up all of this trauma, and yeah, it can just be a lot, I guess. But the next step of the assessment was to sit down with either my partner or one of my parents. I think you can have a sibling, basically just anyone who knew you while you were growing up, and could sort of testify to seeing these behaviours that relate to autism and ADHD while I was growing up. Because a big thing with getting diagnosed is that they need to be able to see these behaviours as you were growing up, when you were little, not just at the current present moment in your life, because they need to be able to prove that this is an ongoing, long-term disability that you have. So this was a really important stage in the process. I ended up getting my partner to do a lot of the talking, so he was there on the Zoom call for this part with the assessor, and she asked him a lot of questions, which was really helpful, and I'm really grateful that he's very understanding through this. I did also get my mum to fill out a lot of the sort of childhood developmental stages and questions like that as well, to give to the assessor, because they really need someone who was there when you were younger. And obviously me and my partner have only been together for 3 years, so that wasn't really enough. They really do need someone from when you were younger, which I think is quite unfair, because I mean, it makes sense, but it's unfair to people who want to get a diagnosis and know that they have autism or ADHD, but they can't because they don't have someone who is supporting them enough that they could ask them to fill out these questionnaires and get them to come in and answer these questions, which I think is really, really awful. Because yeah, if you don't have a good relationship with your family or with your parents, then there isn't really anyone who can help and even just emotionally support you through this as well. So yeah, a lot of people, I assume, can't get diagnosed because they don't have that person who knew them when they were younger and would willingly testify to these things that would allow you to get a diagnosis. Completely forgot as well, there were also a lot of like personality, I forget what they're called, but personality related sort of quizzes and questionnaires that I had to fill out as well, that I had to, I think there were up to like 20 of them that I had to fill out and send to the assessor, just on like an online PDF. So there's also that. So that was sort of going on in between each of the appointments. And yeah, my mum had to fill out quite a few of those as well. And that was pretty much it though. I think that was sort of the end of the process, and then it was sort of like, okay, she has all of the materials needed to formally decide whether she's going to give me a diagnosis. And then I think she told me I had to wait up to 3 to 6 weeks. And I think I ended up waiting 6 or 7 weeks to finally get my formal diagnosis. Keep in mind, yeah, like in between that time, I was very, very scared and worried that I hadn't given her enough background and information in order for her to diagnose me. I was very, very nervous, and yeah, I honestly wasn't sure whether she was going to diagnose me at all. So that period of 3 to 6 weeks of waiting is really, really uncomfortable. And yeah, because it's sort of all you can think about. You're sort of just waiting for the final, yes, like you are autistic, you have been dealing with these things your whole life undiagnosed, or no, like, and I have heard of people going through this whole process and yeah, just not getting diagnosed, or getting diagnosed with something that they don't necessarily identify with, maybe because there's some confusion in the process, I don't know. But that would just be so sort of, yeah, horrible going through that whole process. It's not funny, I don't know why I'm laughing, it's nervous laughter. And then yeah, finding out that you're not getting diagnosed, and especially after paying that much money for the process as well. We set up a Zoom call within 6 or 7 weeks, and I was formally told that I have autism level 2 and ADHD. And it was very anticlimactic. I was really, really expecting it sort of to be like this. I don't know what I was expecting. Definitely had this naive idea of what it was going to feel like when I finally sort of was given like someone telling me, yeah, you're right, you are autistic and you do have ADHD. But no, it was sort of like just a Zoom call where she went through all of the reasons of why she came to that conclusion, and then yeah, she basically just casually said, so I'm going to diagnose you with level 2 autism. And for me, that was just like in my head, but for her, it was sort of just like this casual thing. Well, that's what it felt like. I'm not sort of saying that she didn't She didn't know the impact of what she was saying. I'm just saying that that's how it felt. That's how it came across, because for me it was like this big thing, but it didn't feel like anything. Also, just the fact that I didn't have heaps of people that I felt comfortable telling about it, just because I wouldn't even really know how to go about telling people. I did tell my mum pretty much straight away, because she obviously was aware that I was going through this. For me, when I was going through this process, autism and ADHD became my new hyperfixation, and I couldn't really stop talking about it around everyone, and I think it got to a certain point where people just were tired of hearing about it, which is totally understandable. And so it got to a certain point where I don't think I felt very comfortable talking about, me getting diagnosed in front of people. It was just sort of something that I sort of kept to myself, or I tried not to make a big deal out of it, even though it felt like a big deal for me. And I think that is the experience for a lot of people. I could be wrong though. A lot of late diagnosed, people. But I don't regret getting diagnosed at all. It's still the best thing that I ever did. And it was still the most validating thing that I ever did, after years of sort of battling internally in my mind and having no one sort of understand it or know how to help me or support me. So just having an idea of how my brain works and knowing what I can do to sort of support that, now that I can do the research and know exactly what it is that I'm dealing with, that was the best thing that I ever decided to do. So I would definitely recommend it to anyone who feels like they need a diagnosis. Obviously if you can afford it, and if I would definitely recommend it to anyone considering it. But it isn't for everyone, and I do understand that. Some people are happy just being self-diagnosed, and they are happy just knowing what they know about themselves, and I understand that. I think I just needed to go that extra step, because it's always felt like something that's in my head and something that I'm making up, basically. I constantly have this fear that this is not what I'm actually dealing with and that I'm wrong. And so I needed the confirmation that this is what I'm actually, that autism is what it is, that is me, basically. And I do have ADHD, and that it's not something else. After that, the psychologist who was doing my assessment had to actually write up the report, so she hadn't actually finished the finalized report when she had already told me what she was going to diagnose me with. That also took another couple of weeks for me to get the actual feedback on written feedback on the assessment, and just sort of have a cemented written diagnosis, basically. And that basically goes through everything that she has analysed and concluded about me and the answers to my questions, and Mum's answers as well. It's also just a really uncomfortable time when you're going through diagnosis and just coming to the realization that this is what you've been missing basically your whole life. And I want to talk more about that because it's been a challenging couple of months after getting my diagnosis, and yeah, even just going through my diagnosis and trying to figure out what's sort of next and how I might unmask more to prevent burnout, and trying to figure out a sustainable lifestyle that works for me now, knowing this knowledge about myself. Kind of isolating and lonely, especially since I don't actually know a lot of neurodiverse people in my life. When you're growing up, you have this sort of idea, obviously, of how your life's gonna go, and now that has sort of changed because of my diagnosis, I'm just trying to figure out where to go to next, especially in regards to work and how I basically live my everyday life, how I conserve my energy and don't push myself to mask as much so that I can actually enjoy my existence, hopefully. Thank you for watching. I want to keep making content and videos, hopefully, probably not very frequently, but I would like to make more videos like this because it is a special interest of mine and I enjoy making them, and I enjoy connecting with people in the autistic community. I feel like I have a community now that I can really connect with, and yeah, I'm excited to connect with more people in the neurodiverse community. Even if no one watches these videos, I still feel like I am somehow doing this for someone that isn't me, and that feels good. And I am also obviously doing this for me, so this feels very awkward still, talking to a camera. I'm not very used to this. I'm also just like, this feels like I'm talking to a stranger, which I am, but I don't enjoy talking to strangers, so that might be why I come off as very uncomfortable and awkward. But hopefully not too much. I will see you next time in my next video.